Hi everyone, my name is Paul Gunderson and this is a business initiatives demonstration. The concept behind this demonstration is that a business determines that its net income and revenue will remain about the same from one year to the next unless they intervene with a sales initiative. We begin by showing a Power BI dashboard that provides management with high-level visibility to a base case. We then use Microsoft Excel and some additional productivity tools that allow for Excel and the dashboard to interact back and forth in a collaborative manner. In this demonstration, we show collaboration that leads to unprecedented gains in productivity. In this case, we have the base business for 2018, and in looking at the net income line, we see that it is varying quite a lot, but that there is no definite trend across the year. The same would be true here for revenue. It is generally flat with a couple of highs and lows throughout the year. So management or leadership understands that if they do nothing, that going into 2019, that the base business will look about the same from one year to the next. So the question then becomes, well, what to do to affect change? So let's quickly examine a few things about the base business for 2018. Please notice that in terms of revenue, we have 117, 72, and 90. These numbers tie to an Excel workbook that we can see right here, where we have 117, 72, and 90 tying back to the revenue line. What is unique about this workbook, though, is that it is live linked to data that sits in the cloud. So we can pick what we want to look at in terms of, do we want to look at the actuals? Do we want to look at other numbers like the forecast or a pessimistic or optimistic case? And for any of these that we might choose, upon recalculating by pressing F9, it brings the data back into the workbook. Similarly, we can choose what period we're interested in or what area of the business that we're interested in looking at as well. Notice a few other unique features that if I were to delete a whole section of this workbook and then simply press F9 to recalc, we actually go back out to the cloud and we bring the data back into the workbook, so we're live linked to an underlying data source. Additionally, if I were to try and overtype a total, like you could do if there were an @sum command here, the engine that sits in the cloud will not allow me to make a change here because we control the aggregates in the cloud, not in Excel. So this is the beginning of an idea called live linking of data between the cloud and Excel that allows data to be live in Excel instead of dead on arrival, which is what you really have in most Excel workbooks today. So let's transition our thinking now from the idea of the base business in 2018 to an initiative in 2019. So if we start out, we have an initiative that we want to undertake in 2019 to impact net income and revenue. We haven't implemented anything yet. We begin by moving to a scenario here where we've made some selections. We've said we're interested in having an initiative. We're going to call it our forecast for 2019. And related to this forecast, I've just chosen this from our list here. We have a forecast for, we'll call it Initiative 1 for sales in 2019, right? So now that we have this, what we want to know is, well, if we're going to have a sales initiative, maybe we're going to hire some staff. Let's say we hire 8 people, and we're going to expect to pay them $60,000 each. There are going to be some recruiting fees, and it takes time for these people to get on board, so there's a ramp rate. We expect that we'll lose some people through time, and that over time, though, they'll become more productive, and they'll begin bringing in revenue every month. There are also impacts on days receivables, payables. We have to pay commissions, and things like we expect to spend part of our money on sales and marketing and promotion and for administration and so on. The point behind all of these different numbers here is that these impact lines on our P&L. So I went ahead and I've selected certain items that you saw me select here. And when I recalc this, remember the idea of this data being live linked between Excel and the cloud and our dashboard. The idea is now that I've recalced this, I have a P&L over here that when I recalc this, it will bring back all of the settings and you'll see where the changes have occurred. Now the settings that we see right here are the same as we have for our scenario that we just entered right here. So the idea is that now I can review this particular scenario in my P&L, and each of the blue chiclets represents something that has changed. So notice here I've got $60,000 going across this. This is my cost per person. I start out with 8 people. We reduced to 5 because of attrition that was noted in our form. We're expecting that there will be $25,000 per person yield on this over time. And these variables altogether then generate $40,000 and increasing over time based upon each person's throughput and their ability to get on board. You can see here we also have some cost of sales, and as we go down through the rest of the P&L, we have monies that are allocated to training, marketing, office general, commissions, recruiting, and so on. So essentially, we've used the drivers in our scenario over here for a person who may be located in another office. They're able to enter their data. Someone in finance picks up on the P&L and is able to review it. And coincidentally, the data is all tied together so that if I come back to Power BI, now we can actually see the impact on net income. You can see that I've moved the revenue line and so on. The idea, though, is what I'm really interested in doing is saying, well, what is the impact of Initiative 1 plus my base business? Because this is really what I'm after. So you can see if I just look at the base business alone, the net income line looks like this, and my revenues appear relatively flat. And by implementing Initiative 1 at the same time, you now see the combination of both. Now, with Initiative 1 for 2019, we have certainly affected net income and have been able to get it to go in a trend for the initiative, and we've impacted revenue. But the problem is, from a balance sheet and cash position, we're negative in terms of we're drawing down on cash because of the people whom we've hired. So how to affect this change? Well, we have another person in another area of the business who is able to enter a loan amount of $250,000 at 7.5%. And when they do so in recalc, we generate the amortization schedule that you can see out here towards the right. And additionally, we also update the P&L and the balance sheet as well. So when I recalc my P&L and we begin to page down through it, you're going to see the specific line items that have been impacted as a result of the calcs that we're doing. So all of this is impacted in a multidimensional and collaborative way through the model that we've set up that is being run through the cloud. And additionally, if we come back now to our dashboard, when we finish the refresh, you're going to see here that now my numbers have changed and my cash position is positive. So this is all good. This is what we're looking to do in terms of being able to first address the drivers for sales and second, be able to fund it. But you see this nice collaboration between Excel through the cloud, back to Power BI, and so on, in such a way that when we come back and look at the profit and loss now, we want to put it all together, and you can begin to see for 2019 what would happen. We start seeing our net income begin to move in a nice positive trend, which is what we're after. Now, the last part of this demo is to show you exactly how we create these kinds of reports that you see right here, because there are an infinite number of variations of what you could create. To do so, I'm going to go into a tool called Power OLAP. In Power OLAP, it has the idea of a slice. So I have to make a slice off of a cube, so I choose my financial data cube, and in doing so, now we see the idea that I have versions of my numbers like you've seen already. I've got my versions, I've got my years, we have the initiatives, we have our product department where we're choosing sales, and now I can begin to say, well, what do I want in the rows and in the columns? So I can basically pick and choose among anything that I want to see. Now I'm going to drill briefly into net income so that we can go down into this a bit and start looking at into gross profit and then down into revenue. there's a very specific reason that I'm doing this. When I recalc now, this opens up the slice. And notice that we have certain areas here that are blue and other areas that are red. The reds are aggregates and the blues are open for input. So if I punch in a very large number right here and press F9, when it recalcs up into January and to the left into my quarters. So you can see how it does this work. At the same point in time in my workbook right here, when I refresh, this workbook is looking at that same intersection, and here's now my $99 million number. And so we have an ability through Power OLAP to drive collaboration. Now additionally, I might want to take this slice and drop it out to Microsoft Excel. So I'll drop it out to Excel. And when I do so, it comes up in what I call a scratchpad format that we can begin to work with. Let me just add some formatting very quickly to this. And voila, we have a workbook that we can begin to work with. All of these hot spots and live links that you saw in the other workbooks are available here as well. And we can begin to punch in numbers. And I can't do that here because it's an aggregate. So I'll go off to January, and I'll put in a number, and I'll do the same thing in the cell just beneath it. Now by doing so, when I recalc, the same idea happens is we're recalcing up and over, and additionally in my other workbooks that we have out here, these numbers now appear as well. And again, if I make a change here to something, it will not only be effective in my second workbook right here, there we go, but it also becomes visible back here in Power OLAP as well. You can now see that we've made a big impact on our sales number through making the changes that we've made back here in Microsoft Excel. Now a few things about this slice. First of all, be aware that we have a command. The way that we live link the data to the workbook is through this OLAP database command that you see right here. This is the command that allows us to link to a database to the outside world. Here you see the cube name where the data resides, and then finally there is a command here called OLAP database. It's a formula that tells us what the filters are, and it also tells us what will be displayed in the grid. There are numerous ways that we can bring data back, and OLAP table is one of the possibilities. Additionally, let me just add in a couple of other points here, is to say that if I were to insert some columns like you see me doing right here, we can simply take January and February and drag them across, and Excel extends the names obviously, and when we refresh, that data comes back into the grid. At the same point in time, the fact that I added a column extends the range within the OLAP table command. We also have other functionality that you can add in as well, in the fact that if you want to add columns to your reports, something like April plus May, when I add this back into the report, and again do an F9 to recalc, we live link the data back out to the cube that sits in the cloud, and we bring the data back. So that's a quick summary of how we connect to the outside world and how we are able to bring data back into the table very, very easily, and also that you and your users can make easy changes like this to the rows or the columns that are in the grid. I'll bring this all together by saying that at the center of all of this activity is a tool that BI Tech has called Olation. Olation is the great connector that allows us to connect Excel to Power BI, to bring in data from systems like Xero into this centralized hub of metrics and plans, and allow users to have this fluid and collaborative experience that you've seen me demonstrate in our walkthrough today. Let me finally say thank you for attending this video presentation one more time. BI Tech is about planning, meaning budgets, forecasts, what-if analysis, and scenarios. We're about driving collaboration among your people and driving it in your team in such a way that it leads to unprecedented gains in productivity. And finally, we're about housing the metrics that you need to run and drive your business, whether those metrics are financially oriented, like you've seen us present here today, or whether they are non-financial, such as regulatory metrics or sustainability metrics. Again, thanks for watching.